Tyler, there's a story to be told, and her crazy new adventures are never getting old. A new story along the way. Everything's gonna be okay. Pinky's story, stand right out. Yes, sir, Rooney, pause it, Toonie, jump and shout. Hey, Pinky, P-I-N-K-Y, D-I-N-K-Y-D-O. That spells Pinky, Dinky, do it right. P-I-N-K-Y, D-I-N-K-Y-D-O. That spells Pinky, Dinky, do. Mr. Guinea Pig is so cute and funny. He loves her stories, he's so sunny. Her mommy and daddy do love her like they care for you. Her best buddy Nicholas Biscuit does everything in his own way. Pinky gets along with him so much and wishes to let the friendship stay. And then there's Daphne Toilet, she's so pretty, what a treat. Pinky and Daphne connecting together, their friendship can't be beat. A new story along the way. Everything's gonna be okay. Pinky's story, stand right out. Yes, sir, Rooney, pause it, Toonie, jump and shout. Hey, Pinky, P-I-N-K-Y, D-I-N-K-Y-D-O. That spells Pinky, Dinky, do it right. P-I-N-K-Y, D-I-N-K-Y-D-O. That spells Pinky, Dinky, do. Then there's Bobby Boom, the smart one. His glasses are a smash. Bobby's got a wheelchair too, but he will never crash. Pinky's been his friend since the story began, and to create a new